All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you would please take your seats. We're running a little bit behind already by about 10 minutes, so I'd like to get started. Before we get started, I'm going to apologize. I have been suffering from a lousy cold for about 2 weeks, and so you might hear a sneeze, a cough, some other horrible noise coming out of me. Please forgive me. I'll try and... I asked the vice chair if he sees me slipping under the desk, he's got to take over quickly. So, welcome, and thank you all for coming today. I'm calling the California Building Standards Commission meeting to order. Misty, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Madam Batcher.
Here.
Commissioner Barthman.
Present.
Commissioner Booth.
Here.
Commissioner Klaus-Bruckner.
Here.
Commissioner Mickelton.
Here.
Commissioner Roberts.
Here.
Commissioner Sasaki.
Here.
Commissioner Winkle.
Here.
Commissioner Patel.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Misty, and we do have a quorum for this meeting. I'd like you all to join me in standing to pledge allegiance to our flag, and I've asked Commissioner Winkle to lead us.
I pledge allegiance to
the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you. I do want to, with some housekeeping notes here, I want to remind everyone we do have the closed captioning today, and as a result of that, I'm really wanting anybody that speaks, commissioners as well as the public and witnesses, to speak as slowly as possible and enunciate so that we're able to capture each and every one of our important words. So just a reminder, and I may have to remind you along the way too. I'd also like to remind the public to please complete the request to address the commission form for items you wish to address the commission about. The form is buff in color. It looks like this. Buff in color, and is available at the table located at the back. And please turn those forms, once completed, into the CBSC staff. Staff who need the forms, please raise your hands. Okay. Everybody see that? All right, super. The next item on the agenda is item number 2, proposed emergency standards adoptions of the approved and approvals regarding the reduction of water used for outdoor landscape irrigation. There are 4 state agencies that will be presenting the proposals for the emergency building standards to address outdoor landscape irrigation in the California Green Building Standards Code, CalGreen. The Commission will take action on these items to first consider the finding of emergency and then determine whether the finding is acceptable. So that's a 2-stage process. The Commission must either approve or disapprove the state agency finding of emergency. If approved, the Commission will then consider the proposed change to the subject building standard and take action to approve, disapprove, return for further study, or approve as amended the proposed code change based upon the criteria stated in the Health and Safety Code 18930. If the finding of emergency is disapproved, the Commission will take no further action on that item. Okay? All right. Item 2A is the next item on the agenda. That is the California Building Standards Commission. These proposed building standards would add, amend, or repeal building standards relative to water efficiency affecting a reduction in the outdoor irrigation water usage relative to Chapter 2, 5, and A5 within Part 11 of Title 24. So, with that, will the representatives from the California Building Standards Commission please come forward and present this item? And when doing so, hi, please introduce yourself and give your title for the record, please. Thank you.
Can you hear me fine?
Yes.
All
And
right.
speak slowly.
I will do that. My name is Mia Marvelli with the Building Standards Commission, and thank you,
A
Commissioners.
little bit more into the mic, please.
I'm going to lower it so I can read. Is that better?
No, directly, not lower, more direct into the mic, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, better.
It's uncomfortable. So before you today are the Cal Green Emergency Building Standards for the reduction of outdoor water use in landscape areas from the various 4 state agencies. The Building Standards Commission would like to express its gratitude to these agencies. I'm not sure if all the commissioners are aware, but these emergency regulations were put together in a very quick manner with these different agencies, and it was a little unusual, but that is why it is an emergency, which I'll get into in a minute. We particularly like to express our gratitude towards the Department of Water Resources as the regulations enhance the existing regulations that the Department of Water Resources handles called MWILLO, which is the I have it. Model Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance, sorry. In particular, Julie Starr-Edmonds, Peter Brostrom, and Vicki Lake were involved with our office and the other state agencies to work closely over the last few weeks to amend this regulation. First, I'm going to present the finding of emergency, and then we'll get into the actual regulations themselves. I'm going to try not to discuss too much about the regulations themselves, but just the finding of emergency, but they overlap a little, so I'll be careful. As I mentioned earlier, the proposed emergency regulations are only in Cal Green. It affects the definitions in Chapter 2. There's some new definitions, and there's some repealed definitions. Those are enabled to support the mandatory and voluntary sections that are being amended in sections 5.304, outdoor water use. The Building Standards Commission's authority, these would affect state-owned buildings, the UC systems and the CSU systems, and also non-residential construction. Put bluntly, basically commercial projects, okay? The emergency regulations add definitions, and I already said that, I'm sorry. So getting into the emergency itself, January 17th of 2014, so a year and a half ago, and again in April of 2014, Governor Brown proclaimed a state of emergency exists throughout California due to the severe drought conditions. Then this year in April 1 of 2015, the governor issued an executive order, which is B-2915. And the order cites evidence of a record low snowpack, decreased water levels in reservoirs, reduced river flows, and declining supplies of underground water. The order found the conditions of extreme peril to the safety of persons and property and continue to exist due to water shortages and drought conditions. The governor acknowledged there is a distinct possibility for the drought to continue. The order also directs state agencies to implement immediate measures to save water, increase enforcement against water waste, invest in new technologies, and streamline government response to ongoing drought conditions. To carry out these provisions, the order directs state agencies to adopt necessary emergency regulations. With that said, the Building Standards Commission reviewed its existing regulations and in Cal Green determined that at this time it's possible to further reduce the use of water in landscape areas by making the Tier 2 voluntary measures for outdoor water use to mandatory regulations. This action enhances an already existing regulation in Title 23 by the Department of Water Resources, which mandates a Model Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance. And I'll speak more about that when we get into the emergency regulations themselves. The California Building Standards Commission conducted its Cal Green. I'm going to talk about the time frame right now that we're entering into. The Building Standards Commission and the other state agencies have already conducted their workshops for the current rulemaking cycle that we're in right now. That language is going to be delivered to our office actually later today and at the end of June. So in order to effectively change the regulations I'm presenting later, we would have had to do that during the workshop phase. And those regulations will not be in effect until January 1 of 2017. So that's 18 months away. That delay does not address the governor's declared emergency for effective conservation of California's limited water. That said, the Building Standards Commission proposes the adoption of these building standards through the emergency adoption process. If approved, they would have an effective date upon filing with the Secretary, which would either be this afternoon, depending on our time frame, or Monday, June 1st. This concludes the Building Standards Commission finding of emergency for the reduction of outdoor water use in Cal Green, Part 11, Title 24. With that said, the Building Standards Commission requests the Commission approve the finding of emergency. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mia. We'll now turn to opening for discussion for the commissioners on this finding of an emergency. Yes.
I just have a quick question. Under the Health and Safety Code section, there are outdated code references. Is that going to affect anything we vote on today? It's under 18938, item B. It's all references to Uniform Fire Code and Western Fire Chiefs. It's like over a decade old.
Hang on a second. We're going to take a look at that.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, those are currently in statute, and the way statutory changes happen is a slow process. So these were codes that have been in since, I believe, early 90s, and they have not been updated yet. There's since been Attorney General opinions regarding the applicability of those, and so the new codes that we adopt are the codes that are available, and so the fact that the statute is different does not affect us.
Thank you.
A helpful clarification, though. Thank you. Are there any other comments from any other commissioners? Okay, seeing none, we'll now take comments from members of the public on item 2AI, which is the finding of an emergency. Okay, I don't see that we have any members coming forward from the public. Do we have speaker cards, but I don't think they're on the matter of finding an emergency, are they, Mike?
Well, they address items 2A and 2B, so I believe they're addressing the regulations, yes.
If that is not accurate for those who have submitted cards, please wave your arm, come to the table, do something. Okay, good. Then we've got you clear on that. All right. So no speaker cards seen. Are there, Leon? Are there any members of the public on the phone that would like to speak to the finding of emergency? Okay. Yeah, I do not believe there's anybody on the phone, so we will proceed to finding of the emergency. So. That concludes the public comment portion, so I will turn to 2AI back over to the commissioners and entertain a motion at this time to first consider the California Building Standards Commission finding of emergency. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second?
It has been moved and seconded to agree to the emergency finding as stated by the California Building Standards Commission. Is there any further discussion of this item at this time? Okay, seeing none. Hearing none and seeing none, we will need to take a roll call vote.
Commissioner Barthman,
It's either aye or nay or abstain.
Yes.
Commissioner Booth,
Aye.
Commissioner Klaus Brechner, Commissioner Mickelton,
Aye.
Commissioner Roberts,
Aye.
Commissioner Sasaki,
Aye.
Commissioner Winkle,
Aye.
and Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Thank you.
All voted? Okay, thank you. The vote is unanimous, and the motion is carried. Thank you all very much. Okay. We're now moving to item, I've got to find my place here, 2AII, and we have that presented. Where am I here? So do we have presented? Oh, okay, great. I'm sorry. I didn't have a precise direction there. Mia, would you like to discuss the regulation now? Thank you.
Is this back on? Okay.
Yes. Just
All
speak
right.
directly into it.
So, for your benefit, I have the same document that you folks have, and I'm reading from the emergency express terms within item 2AII. And I'm just going to go through and lay out, and I'll give a little rationale as to the modifications. But again, I'll go back to the fact that the Building Standards Commission did this in conjunction with the Department of Water Resources, HCD, Housing and Community Development, excuse me, I'll try not to use the acronyms, the Division of the State Architect, and Office of Statewide Health Planning and Development. In doing that, we essentially took what currently is in Cal Green in Tier 2, which if lowered the efficiency rate within the model water calculator. There's a water budget calculator that DWR uses to reduce outdoor water use. And Tier 2 in Cal Green, under the BSC's authority, essentially enhance the factors that are within that calculator. So we simply move that information from Tier 2 to the mandatory provision. So what you're seeing in front of you that is new language is a new definition that is in alignment with the definition in the Department of Water Resources MWILO regulations for the ET adjustment factor. And for building standards purposes, the factor is replaced from a 0.70 factor to a 0.55 factor, which essentially reduces water usage even more efficiently than what the Department of Water Resources existing MWILO regulations contain. We're repealing some definitions that are no longer used in this particular section. And then we've edited the definition for model water efficient landscape ordinance to better align with DWR's definition. We worked closely with the Department of Water Resources on this language in doing so. Our reason for repealing, I'm on page 2 of 6, our reason for repealing the reference evapotranspiration definition is because that's no longer used in the regulation. In reviewing this information with the agencies, we realized that we should have been using a different term than we were using, so we've enhanced the regulations even more. We're adding a definition special landscape areas, as this is the factor at the other end of the algebra problem. So you have the 0.55 on one end, and then you have this special landscape area, which defines areas that are allowed to use a little bit more water due to their usage. And for those numbers to equal 1, we had to adjust it to 0.45. We're eliminating the definition for water budget, as all along it's been required by the Department of Water Resources in Title 23 that a water budget is provided. And to create that water budget, you use the factors and the equations that we'll be discussing in our regulations. One of the other things I want to bring up, one of the factors that was happening is apparently in the DWR's world and in the building officials' world, there's a feeling that the MWILO was not being enforced to the greatest extent. So one of the other reasons for putting this in Title 24 is that it would put this in the hands and the laps of the building officials and the designers so that it would have a better presence and hopefully have higher enforcement. Moving on to Chapter 5, these are the mandatory measures for non-residential construction. And you'll see the definition term, and I ask that this be approved as amended in this particular instance because the underlying term envirotranspiration adjustment factor is incorrect. It should read just like the definition, which is the ET adjustment factor. So my apologies, that's just a term that was not correct.
So what is the correct term? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Under definitions on page 2,
Right.
we recite the terms there, and that term should match what's on the first page, which is ET adjustment factor, parentheses ETAF.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
And the rest of the terms are showed for clarity, and then we're also including in the terms that the special landscape area is available for this section and also repealing the water budget term. Okay, moving on to section 5.304, outdoor water use. We're repealing the water budget existing regulation because now what we're basically saying is you need to follow all of MWILO for landscaped areas greater than 2,500 square feet. And included in that MWILO is the actual water calculator and the water budget factoring. So there was no need to have that regulation there. MWILO allows for either a local water efficient landscape ordinance that is at same or more efficient than the MWILO itself, or you must be using the existing MWILO ordinance as mandated by DWR. So that's items 1 and 2 underneath section 5.304.1. The notes below merely are there for user reference, and those point to where you can find the calculator online and some other MWILO documentation. These will be edited prior to publication to ensure that the links are accurate. We are in communication right now with DWR, and they are going to provide a calculator on their website, which will have the updated information in them so that the landscape architects and designers and local jurisdictions can use that calculator accurately, and it will comply with CalGreen. There are other methods to reduce the use of potable water, and we list them here. Some of these were already in CalGreen, but we combine them and clean them up. Of course, we have the use of captured rainwater, recycled water, or gray water, as defined in the California Plumbing Code. We did leave it, I'll call it an exception, but there's a regulation in here that allows a local jurisdiction to approve potable water and outdoor use for the health and safety reasons. And then on page 4 of 6, this language merely captures landscaped areas that are 1,000 to 2,500 square feet. This is below the range that MWILO captures, and Building Standards Commission is suggesting that there are irrigation control sensors that apply, and also irrigation controllers. These were existing regulations within CalGreen already. We just gave it a new section title and heading to better clarify the application. And then in doing that, we needed to renumber the last section, which is 5.304.4 for outdoor water use meters. That's existing language carrying forward. The remainder of the regulations are in the voluntary measures, so I'm down at the bottom of page 4 of 6, Appendix 5A, A5. And this merely is a similar cleanup language that we did in the mandatory chapter. But what happened here is since we moved Tier 2 to the mandatory measures, we're simply repealing Tiers 1 and Tier 2. We're maintaining outdoor water use and capturing even a smaller area if a local jurisdiction chooses to adopt this, and it would encompass areas anywhere from 500 to 1,000 square feet. On page 6 of 6, again, you're seeing repealed language that is being captured in the mandatory language. There were no changes to section A5.305. And just for clarity here, at the end of Cal Green, there are some tables for the local jurisdictions and the designers. Those will be updated accordingly to match whatever regulations are approved here today. I didn't show the entire table because it's quite lengthy. So that concludes my portion of the presentation, and I'm here for questions.
Thank you, Mia. Item 2A II is now open for the commissioners' questions and comments. Yes, sir.
Just a quick question. Would you view this proposal to enhance, degrade, or remain neutral to use of gray water systems, or the volume of gray water used?
Well, it's interesting that what's interesting about how MWILA works is there is language in there that just talks about water use, period. But they're under these special landscaped areas, you're able to utilize more water if it comes from a recycle or a gray water system. So I would say it would enhance it to some degree, but it still captures that within the equation.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question.
Yes, sure, of course.
So the ET adjustment factor went from 0.7
Yes.
to 0.55, which is, I just did a
At
quick
15.
calculation, a little more than 25% reduction. How did you guys figure out the 0.55 number?
Well, because it was already in Tier 2. So several years back, the Building Standards Commission had worked with the Department of Water Resources to create the tiers. I don't have the history in my head of how that came about, but there was discussion done between the agencies, and that's what created the Tier 2. And it was suggested that, move Tier 2 forward. That's where we got the 0.55.
And
Commissioner Sasaki, I might be able to add a little bit to that. I was actually involved in that process, and the intent on the tiers within Cal Green is you have a mandatory provision, and when you reach the tier level requirements, we reached for a percentage of efficiency higher. So in Tier 1, it was a 10% increase over what MWILA would require. Tier 2 was a 15% increase. So that's where the numbers originally came from, and that's where we went to move them into the mandatory, so that we're creating that Tier 2 level as a mandatory requirement. But that's originally how it was done. It was intended to be a 10% and a 15% increase in efficiency.
And just to the number of 0.55, which the change is going to, have we gotten back any feedback about that's a reasonable or achievable number?
No, the Building Standards has not, and part of that is this, during the emergency process, it's such a short time frame, normal rulemaking isn't done. So this was vetted throughout the 4 agencies.
And do we have, so on the MWILA, do we have so my understanding it's been in effect through DWR through Chapter 23 of the California Code of Regulations since 2010, but there was a note that it's not sure how many jurisdictions have either developed their own. So I guess I'm wondering, my question is, do we know how many jurisdictions have developed their own ordinance, or are most jurisdictions relying on the MWILA ordinance?
I I don't have an exact number of how many have adopted their own versus the Willow. What I'm understanding from DWR is there's about a 75% enforcement rate. So whether or not it's their own or DWR's basic, I couldn't answer that. But I think the key is if it's a local ordinance, it has to be as effective or more effective than the Willow. So regardless, they're estimating approximately a 75% enforcement rate at this time, which is great. But I think due to the emergency, what can we do to make it more enforceable?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yes.
I had a quick question on the way the language is written in section 5.304.2.
Methods to reduce potable water?
It's not regulatory code language. It almost sounds like an informational bulletin. Are you guys using that language in reference to 5.304.1? Because it just says other methods to reduce potable water use in landscape include but are not limited to. But it doesn't tell you, it's not, to me, it's almost vague. And it doesn't meet the 9-point criteria as it's written. Was that in reference to, when you're talking about methods, is it in reference to 5.304.1?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I guess my question is, should we be saying something like, when applying the requirements prescribed in section 5.304.1, then continue the language, other methods to reduce potable?
No, it's actually intended to be its own section, but I hear you in that you are correct. It is more information on there are other ways to use potable water. I think this was an allowance, and I'm trying to remember.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot,
that's okay.
But it just doesn't tell you how much should be used or what
Where
should
or
or
when,
where.
right.
It's just like, here's some methods. You
And I
can
think-
use it or not.
I honestly think, that in moving the tier 2 option to the mandatory measures, what we were trying to do is clean up the language that was in tier 2, and some of that included plant coefficient, and I'm reading from page 5 of 6. Plant coefficient, irrigation efficiency, distribution uniformity, use of captured rainwater. The reality is any of those items can be used to water for outdoor water use. And so what happened is we were just simply stating that these are other ways you can use water outside. But you're correct in that the Willow is a calculation for the entire landscaped area. It doesn't matter where the water comes from, other than in the equation it's going to separate whether it's potable or whether it's reused water. And this can be massaged during certifying rulemaking, because what happens after this step, if this is approved, is that we go to certifying rulemaking and we would be reaching out and massaging this language. So that certainly is something we'll jot down, that is better clarification of that section.
In that case, I strongly recommend, I'm putting in a strong recommendation to word the language so it's proper code language.
Will do, thank you.
Taking note of that, thank you. Okay, yes, sir.
We shouldn't be regulating from definitions, but people do at times do that. The special landscape area, this is getting really nitpicky, but I'm just curious. The definition of special landscape area means an area of landscape dedicated solely to edible plants, et cetera, and areas dedicated to active play. I would think that the and should be an or. Because this is basically the and means you have to meet all the criteria.
Yeah.
I would also note that the same definitions in the DSA the only reason I bring that up is I've had difficulty in other parts of the code with dealing with regulators who look at the definition for definitive guidance, and the ands and ors do matter at that point.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I think in our efforts to align as closely as we could with the Willow definition, it's probably where we captured that. So, and I agree with you. We get calls like that all the time at building standards for.
Would it be a bad match if we made it or and it didn't precisely match the Amwello, or is it?
I don't believe so, because the reason this definition has a BSC behind it is because we're stating that the SLA factor is 0.45 rather than what it was in the Willow.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask my boss up at the dais if this could be approved as amended just with that change in this instance. We're already asking for an approve as amend due to the incorrect term in definitions. Or is that too?
Well, the concern I would have is we're basing the requirements that are in CalGreen off of what's an existing regulation determined by another agency through a different title. So to duplicate what's there, if we're referring to that, is appropriate. We don't know for sure what DWR is going to do when they modify their Amwillow requirements, and they're working on that now. So we're going to be trying to work with them through their process to align ourselves with them, and suggestions like that to them may work out well, and then we can modify our regulations to align. But I'd like to try to keep the alignment just because it is referring to their provisions.
Okay, in that case, if it is in alignment with the current regulations, I would not propose an amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
But we can certainly comment on DWR's package in June. Yeah.
I think it would be beneficial if that became an or, but I don't want to get out of alignment at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Are there any other questions or comments from the commissioners? Okay, seeing none, we'll now take the comments from those people that have put forward a speaker card, and we have several. Let's see. Is this in order? All right, we're going to go alphabetical. So, Helen Roth Dowden. Okay. And if you can restate your name and also the organization you are representing, that would be helpful.
My name is Helen Roth Dowden, and I represent Nexus eWater, which is a water recycling company, originally from Australia, now working in California, working with various projects on water recycling. And first, I want to thank the board for moving so expeditiously on regulations. Given the drought and what's been faced, it's really wonderful that you're moving so quickly. We had just several comments on this that maybe are just matters of we're not understanding some of the language, but under 4304 1.11, where it says use of captured rainwater, recycled water, or gray water designed per the California Plumbing Code. Usually, it's not just the plumbing code usually doesn't design things, it also uses things. So we were wondering whether you might amend it to say designed and used per the plumbing code. So it would just be adding and used there.
Now let me clarify. Did you mention the section numbers beginning with a 4?
Yes.
Okay, that's the residential provisions. I believe HCD will be following us, and so certainly an applicable comment. And you can finish your comment if you'd like, and then when HCD comes up.
So you think that I should wait until you actually get to
HCDs,
okay.
if you want. I didn't see that clearly marked on yours that it was only for the res. Do you have comments for the non-residential side?
No, except just some of the issue of when you're talking about what the alternatives are, the use of recycled water, that you might want to say how that's different than gray water, and you could do that by just putting use of on-site recycled water, which is a different, because gray water is, it depends, or I'm sorry, under 3, where it talks about treated water by a water district. The other possibility is recycled water, which is on-site water, which means it's not coming from a district. So you might want to clarify that, which I believe is in all these code sections.
Thank you.
But the only other comment I had to make was just a clarification when you talk about benchmarks in this, about what the benchmarks actually are, and I was unclear what those benchmarks would be. So with that,
Need to clarify.
thank you very much for your help on this.
Thank you.
I think so. Thank you, Ms. Dowden. Okay. Mr. Norwood?
Madam Chair and members, John Norwood on behalf of the California Pool and Spa Association. Similarly, most of my comments are really going to address residential use. So I should wait for HCD as well. I think the only part of this that is residential is projects over 5,000 square feet. So why don't I don't want to have to repeat, and so why don't I wait until HCD comes up? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry for this little confusion, which we'll try. This is Mr. Quinn's definitely both,
Yes.
right? Okay. I think Mr. Quinn from the NRDC, you're for both, I believe. Oh, Tracy, sorry. Sorry about that. Helps to have glasses on.
My comments are for both, so I'll try to stick
I'm
just
going to ask you to restate your name and who you represent. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. My name is Tracy Quinn. I'm a civil engineer and policy analyst with the Natural Resources Defense Council. So my comments are for both, but I'm going to try to pick through as I go through and just address non-residential. We support the approach that to improved landscape water efficiency included in the proposal before you today, with a few modifications that are outlined further in further detail in the letter that I submitted yesterday. Before I start, I'd just like to say we commend the BSC staff and HCD staff for the hard work that they put into this. We think that they did a really great job, particularly given the short time to respond to this. There are a few areas that we think that the proposal could be improved. First, the proposal doesn't fully respond to Directive 7 of the Governor's April 1st executive order because the new requirements for water budgeting only apply to landscapes larger than 2,500 square feet. While many landscapes, landscapes and new development, and I was particularly referring to residential, but this applies to non-res as well, can be much smaller than this. So we recommend a minimum threshold for the non-residential of 500 square feet instead. It'll encompass a lot more of the new development and really apply to a lot more of the development that's going on. Secondly, you can't manage what you don't measure. So we recommend that the requirement for separate meters or sub-meters for outdoor irrigation in the non-residential sector apply to new landscapes or additional landscapes of 500 square feet or more, aligning those and harmonizing those two minimum thresholds. In my written comments, we also had some recommendations about adding requirements for the irrigation equipment that's used. The CalGreen proposed water budget directly regulates the plan selection, but it doesn't contain a method for determining actual efficiency of the irrigation equipment. Therefore, we recommend requiring that all irrigation technologies meet the nationally recognized American National Standards Institute, ASABE ICC 802-2014, ANSI 802-2014, as proposed by the Irrigation Association to improve irrigation equipment efficiency. And that's all I have for non-residential. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Quinn, and thank you also for your letter. I appreciate it. Okay, moving on. Mr. Raymer, are you both A and B?
Yes.
How did I guess? State your name.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Bob Raymer with the California Building Industry Association. And today, for the sake of time, I'd like to go ahead and just give my general comments on both of these. I'm here today representing a 10-member coalition. And for the record, I'll go ahead and state the names of those organizations that support our comments today. In addition to the Building Industry Association, there's the Business Properties Association, the Building Owners and Managers Association, the California Chamber of Commerce, the California Landscape Contractors Association, the Commercial Real Estate Association, the International Council of Shopping Centers, the California Retail Association, the California Apartment Association, and the American Institute of Architects California Council. Before getting into my comments, I'd like to just say for the record that both BSC and HCD staff have done just an incredible job in an incredibly short period of time. I've never seen this much work, quality work, done so quickly. I think the closest to this was an emergency proceeding that took about 3.5 months. Usually proceedings like this take 6 to 8 months, and your staff got it done in probably 30 days. And so with that, we also understand there's going to be a 180-day period by which these regulations will be going through a formal process to turn them in to permanent standards, at which point a lot of the tweaking and the things that we're going to be noticing in the coming months can be addressed. And we fully expect for that to happen. Some of the things that the group that I represent today find particularly attractive about this, and we have to look at what was originally proposed by the State Water Resources Control Board. Initially, in the governor's executive order and in the Resources Control Board regulations that followed the governor's executive order, there was the very black and white statement that potable water delivered for landscaping would be delivered by drip line or microspray, and that was it. And so one of the reasons that you see the language that you referred to earlier is that if that was to stay in place, it would have inadvertently stopped the ability to use gray water, recycled water, whether it's recycled on-site or off-site, rainwater capture. Most of these systems have some manner of a potable water backup supply. In case the homeowners leave for 2 to 3 weeks, you don't necessarily want to see the vegetation line. However, very little potable water actually gets used on a yearly basis. So if you look further down in that language, you'll notice that if you indeed have a potable water backup line, you've got to show to the building official a calculation that shows that you're using far less water, which is easily done given the magnitude here. In addition, by putting this into the building code, we have section 101.9, which provides the clarity that wasn't necessarily provided in the Resources Control Board language, and that is building codes that are in effect the day you submit your permit application are the codes that you comply with. As such, industry now has very clear guidance that on Monday, when these standards take effect, any permit applications that are submitted to the building department need to comply with these regulations on a going forward basis. And so that type of clarity is what the construction industry needs, the landscape contractors need that, the building officials need that. And so with that, I'd just like to say that the staff has done a good job. And if I could, rather than talking about these regulations, I'd like to talk about going forward. In particular, CBIA would like to basically stick out a hand and shake with the California building officials. We recognize that this is sort of a new aspect of what is going to be part of the enforcement of the Green Code. To date, there's been very little, precious little, landscape water conservation going on within the green building standards. That's about to change in a big way on Monday. Consequently, the building industry would like to find out from the California building officials in particular what type of written or what type of any type of documentation they would like to see and find most useful in getting their job done as quickly and as succinctly as possible. in terms of do you need plans, do you need overheads, do you need the calculations, do you need simply a certification statement indicating that this individual is aware of the standards, and the landscape designer, the landscape architect, the landscape contractor, or the builder hereby certifies that the calculations were done appropriately, et cetera. We're looking to CALBO for guidance on that, and we will, if you come up with one or more ways, we will put that on our website. We'll get that out to our 3,000 member companies, and we just look forward to working with the code cops to make sure that this gets implemented very well. And lastly, as we're going forward, actually two things. It was mentioned before that some of this didn't look like code language. Well, the fact is the BSC and HCD is sort of extracted from Title 23, the DWR provisions, Department of Water Resources. And, both Title 24 and Title 23 are regulations, but Title 23 isn't necessarily building standards. And so we're going to find a number of cases where what we see here now is probably going to have to get tweaked a little bit over the next 180 days. And we look forward to doing that, and we look forward to working with DWR on that effort. Lastly, one of the nicer things about this 180-day period is that DWR is in the process of updating their MWELO. And that's going to happen, from my understanding, in the middle of July.
Yeah.
That would give us the opportunity to further tweak what has been put here into the building standards. And in addition, I've now heard on a number of occasions that in particularly the building officials, and now that I've heard it, the building industry would be, I would say, very supportive of a prescriptive approach that could be applied with certain limitations. Most of California's housing going on today is what we call production volume housing, where you start off a project with 5 or 6 models, you move forward, and so there's a lot of cookie-cutter approach. And a lot of the landscaping going in, the square footage and all that is largely the same. It would be relatively easy to put together a certain set of limitations and assumptions that would go into a prescriptive approach. Obviously, it's not going to apply to every home, but we could probably cut down on a lot of the enforcement time and effort, but also ensure that the job is getting done by coming up with a prescriptive approach. We've done this with fire safety. We've done this with seismic and structural. Certainly with the green building standards, we could do that as well. So with that, unless there's any questions, that concludes my testimony. Yes.
I do have a question. You mentioned that these homes are going in phases. Would that create a problem when you have, let's say, numbers such as 2,500 square feet in there? Because it's going in phases, so the square footage changes from phase 1, it might be 2,000 square feet, and then phase 2 is another 2,000 square feet. But it's going in phases. Would that create a problem with the way the language is written right now?
Actually, no. You're referring to the Building Standards Commission proposal. And in looking at both HCD for residential and for DWR's interpretation for the last 5 years, they looked at the project as a whole. It's basically an accumulation of square footage. And so by the very nature of production housing, as opposed to a custom home here or there, which is very rare these days, we automatically hit that cap, with any type of. So while we weren't all that happy about that interpretation 5 years ago, we understand it, and that's how we're going to apply this. So quite frankly, all new homes are going to be complying with this provision. And I must say, as a side note, in talking to our executive officers and our large builder members, we're probably going to be seeing a lot less grass going into new home construction in the coming months, which I'm sure is part of the intent here, but we've warmed up to that. We realize it. This is an emergency, and so we're going to work with the governor and the administration to get this done. Thank you.
Bob, I have is this on? I have a quick question, and this is probably to Ms. Quinn's comments. So sort of just in general, you mentioned the MWELO upgrades that will be made this summer.
Mm-hmm.
That would be an appropriate time to perhaps look at the square footage that was raised earlier.
Absolutely.
2,500 square feet to the 500 square feet. So you're reducing the amount of irrigated landscaping. That would be a period of time that would be an appropriate time to maybe look at that.
I agree, and that's sort of a foregone conclusion that that's going to be happening. And I'd also like to say that we're talking here today about state standards, whether it's DWR's existing regs in Title 23 or what you may be passing here today. The fact of the matter is local jurisdictions have always had the authority to go above and beyond, and they are. This is just simply providing the backstop. This is the base minimum standard. We're effectively seeing many local jurisdictions saying that if you're putting in any landscaping, you need to comply with this. They're not interested in square footage right now. And so that's sort of, I don't have a crystal ball, but I suspect we're going to be seeing that happen in a big way.
Right. Yes.
Commissioner.
I think that the area was something I was going to bring up, but the Secretary did. But would you be supportive, or do you think it would be a good approach when you're talking about updating the MWELO in terms of prescriptive standards to apply those to smaller areas, and also to maybe treat them, if it's prescriptive, to treat it like you do prescriptive energy standards of having it zoned?
Yes. That's, once again, when I'm thinking of a prescriptive standard, and my good friend Doug Hensel on behalf of Calbo may have a different view, but to me a prescriptive standard in this context is going to be on a house-by-house basis. We wouldn't be looking at the entire project.
Understood.
We would be effectively looking at the two side yards, the backyard and the front yard. We're also seeing a lot of construction, residential construction now, because we have residential sprinklers inside the home for fire safety. We're beginning to see a lot of backyard and single side yard designs, where the physical side of the house now becomes the property line, and you have the 6-foot separation. And so that alone is going to make a significant reduction in landscape. And so, once again, prescriptive to me is house by house, not project by project. And I also have to say that this language regarding the potable water reduction makes it clear that all of these emerging technologies, gray water, recycled water, et cetera, are viable products under these new building standards. And it was important to hear that statement made. Granted, we can certainly do some fine-tuning to make it better building code language, which we agree, but going forward, this is a great start.
And any other questions of Mr. Raymer? Yes, Kent.
So it's actually maybe not a question, Mr. Raymer, but a question about the existing Willow ordinance. I printed out, which I think is the current Willow ordinance, but in there, in the ordinance, it actually says that the local agency shall review a landscape documentation package, and I'm just, what I'm looking for is some confirmation of whether I have this right. And in that landscape documentation package, it says it requires 6 elements. And I'll just go to items. Well, item 1 is project information. Item 2 is water efficient landscape worksheet. 3 is soil management report. 4 is landscape design plan. 5 is irrigation design plan. And 6 is grading design plan. Is that, I don't know if, is that, am I reading that correctly? So that's currently the ordinance?
That's currently
part of
one
it.
Yes.
That's part of it. It's
Okay.
it's fairly lengthy, yeah.
Well,
and that's what we reviewed with DWR in order to make just these specific changes to that.
Right, and so this kind of goes in with the question about reducing the area at which Willow is required. But for example, when I read that there's a soil management report required under Willow, it says that you actually have to do some sort of soil testing.
That's
and
correct.
It seems to me that if you reduce the square footage to, say, someone's house, it would be pretty, difficult for them to comply with having their own soils tested
Right.
and having someone develop.
And to be
that
honest
report.
with you, building standards does not want to get into the business of writing MWELO. And so what we merely did was take what we had in Tier 2 and move it to mandatory because we're touching 2 elements. But you're absolutely right. Their vetting process would need to take a look at that and reducing the square footage that it would be applicable. And I agree. What how much does it make sense to do soil testing in, you know, your 100 square foot front yard? But that is within the purview of DWR's technicality. They have a whole slew of folks that are very savvy on all that.
And we'll be raising this with them in the coming weeks.
Good, because they go hand in.
Oh,
they
absolutely.
go hand in
Absolutely,
hand.
Absolutely.
absolutely,
So.
yeah.
This was a difficult mission, trying to merge sort of a regulation from Title 23 with Title 24. It's
Great.
a little
Thank you.
clumsy. But
Okay. Thank you,
Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Raymer. Okay, we have one other person who has submitted a comment card, Mr. Swellens. Wes Swellens? Good afternoon. If you could just restate your name and who you represent, please.
Yes, hello. Wes Sullins with Stop Waste of Alameda County. We're a local government agency in Alameda that has been doing progressive landscape programs for a number of years. We've got the Bay Friendly program, and it's adopted in about 10 of our 14 cities, and it has a lot of these requirements that you're putting in the code today. So I want to echo some of the comments about having this part of the code address outdoor landscapes is a new and significant scope difference for the building officials. So I definitely want to echo a commitment to use some of the resources we've developed and add those to helping enforcement, because I think that is a big challenge with WELO in general. But today I wanted to speak in support and also on this section 5.304.2. The part that was mentioned is perhaps not in code-specific language. I wanted to offer when those are being refined, that language, amendment to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you're doing with outdoor landscapes, you've got two of the, I think, three critical elements that make up water conservation. And that's, you've got irrigation efficiency, you've got a good system to deliver the water, you've got plant selection with the ET factor, the plant factor, to choose low water using plants. But I think the part that's missing is building a soil that can keep that water and make use of it and retain the water on site for as long as possible. So I'd love to see an amendment that includes top dressing of mulch for those landscaped areas and amends the soil with compost or other fertilizers that add to the soil porosity and the water holding capacity of the soils. So that's my basic comment, is just to add in those things which are in WELO. The compost and mulch is a requirement in WELO. It's recommended to use compost, but to bring those into this portion of the code, either as an informative part or as part of the requirements.
Great, thank you. Any questions of Mr. Sullins? All right, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I don't have any other comment cards. Is there anybody else in the audience or here in the public that wants to comment? Okay, seeing none, then we will turn to the phones. Leanne, is there anyone on the phone? Okay, so no other comments to be made. So with the finding of emergency approved, at this time I would entertain a motion for action on the California Building Standards Commission's proposed changes to the subject building standards.
Should we have a motion to amend it?
And I
at
was just
this
asking
time?
Mike the same for that clarity.
No, I don't think we would suggest amendments unless they're editorial, similar to what Mia had suggested with the change in the definition. Certainly for cleanup, but not anything that would be more of a substantial change.
That's what I was suggesting.
Okay, sorry.
So
I'd like to make a motion to amend section 5.3042.1 to replace envirotranspiration with ET. Am I correct? That's the change.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded to make the amendment as just stated. I'm not going to try and repeat it. Is there any further discussion on that proposed amendment? Okay, seeing none, hearing none. What?
Need a justification on the amendment.
Oh, I'm sorry. We will need a justification for the amendment. And I,
It's editorial for consistency.
yeah, and for consistency, yeah. Hang on one second, I want to make sure we're clear.
The proposing agency has requested to make that amendment, and so based on the 9-point criteria, you want to correct that to avoid the error in the publication. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, we're requesting approve as amend on that one item, yes.
Do we want to point out which point on the 9-point criteria?
We're okay.
All right, okay. Yeah, do you want to restate that, or you're okay?
No, I'm okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So we have a motion made and seconded. It's been clarified and justified. Is there any further discussion? Alex, are we all right? Okay. Seeing none, could you please call the roll? Misty?
Sure. Commissioner Barthman?
Yes.
Commissioner Booth?
Aye.
Commissioner Klaus Bruckner? Commissioner Mickelton?
Aye.
Commissioner Roberts?
Aye.
Commissioner Sasaki?
Aye.
Commissioner Winkle? Aye. Commissioner Patel?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, the amendment has passed unanimously. The motion is carried. So now we need to go back and vote on the full package. Okay, so now, Commissioners, we're going to go and be voting on the proposed emergency reg change, okay? I will accept a motion to accept the California Building Standards Commission proposed changes to the subject building standards.
So moved.
It has been moved
Second.
and seconded to accept the California Building Standards Commission's proposed changes. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none. Misty, this does need a roll call vote. Would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Barthman?
Yes.
Commissioner Booth?
Aye.
Commissioner Klaus Bruckner?
Aye.
Commissioner Mickelton?
Aye.
Commissioner Roberts?
Aye.
Commissioner Sasaki?
Aye.
Commissioner Winkle?
Aye.
And Commissioner Patel?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The vote is unanimous. The motion is carried. Thank you all. Now, on the agenda, we have next next item on the agenda is item 2B, and that's to be presented by HCD. But the Division of State Architect has asked if we could switch his presentation with that of HCD, and if because of a scheduling issue that the state architect has. Does anyone here have any problems with that? Okay. Alex, we're okay doing that? Okay. Sorry, HCD. You're going to have to sit a little bit longer. Okay. Chet, if you and Dennis could please state your names and who you represent.
Yes, my name is Chet Whittam. I'm the state architect, and I do want to thank HCD for the courtesy of allowing us to go forward.
And my name is Dennis Corellis. I'm the principal architect with the Division of the State Architect.
Okay, please proceed.
Okay, Madam Secretary and Commissioners, I thank you for the opportunity to present. DSA is in an unusual position in that not only are we the proposer of a change in regulations, but we are also the only one of the 4 agencies that are presenting that are actually the enforcement agency. So that changes our position a little bit. And we will be coming back to you at your regular section meeting in July, with the second portion, which would really be the enforcement part, the administrative portion, and a lot of the things that you brought up today, we believe that we have to pull them together, such as definitions of special landscape areas, things of that nature. Schools are quite different, obviously, than commercial areas. Campuses are different, and we need to move forward on that. And actually, we've already started meeting with our constituents. We've met with the community colleges. We've met with the K through 12 group, and we believe that there are going to be more in order to pull this together in such a manner that it really works. And quite frankly, I have to tell you, I'm getting the same kind of response from them that you heard from the building owners, et cetera. This is something we all believe we have to do, and it's a very positive side. DSA did not adopt this particular section concerning landscape irrigation prior to this time. So we are not only making some changes, but we are actually adopting that particular section for the first time. Therefore, quite frankly, the sections are identical to those prepared by the Building Standards Commission, including all of the justifications and for an emergency position. The only thing that we are doing is we're asking for a little bit difference on the ET adjustment factor. And the reason for that is that schools, quite frankly, are obviously a very different thing than a commercial development or residential development. In many cases, especially in the urban areas, the children, the people that attend the schools, that's their only opportunity to sit under a tree, to do the things that many people in private homes have, but they don't have it because they're living in a very highly dense urban area. So we are looking at a 0.65, which for schools would be not just a reduction down to from 70% down, but actually from 100% down, or the factor of 1, down to a factor of 0.65. So it's a major reduction in water usage by them. It's a complicated process. We know that. We are identical in all other areas. Our intention is hopefully to pull and have that calculator on the DSA website. And it's been said earlier, quite frankly, architects, landscape architects, builders, et cetera, are not familiar with Title 23. We work out of Title 24, and it's really important for us to have all of those tools there so that there's no confusion. When we come back with our second request for emergency regulations, we will actually be hopefully pulling together the triggers that will turn this over, because we're talking about 20-acre, 40-acre, 60-acre campuses. It's quite different. Quite frankly, most of the projects that are being done on schools at this particular point in time are modernizations to existing schools, existing buildings rather, as opposed to new campuses. There are some, and new buildings. So we're trying to work out those regulations and the administrative process. How do they get it done? We've never done review of landscape up until now. We want to work with our clients, the school districts, et cetera, to figure out how we can do this in a way that will not increase the cost dramatically, because they're already going to be faced with cost increases for schools, and they have limited budgets. We all know that. So that's what we're working with. As I said, we've met with them twice already. Our goal is to have new regulations submitted to Building Standards Commission around the 1st of July, because there's a 15-day public presentation process or outreach process, plus Building Standards needs some time to put this package together. And so we've already started the meetings, and we probably will have 2 or 3 more. I will say that in the DSA proposal, we're going to make it very clear that this is only the use of potable water, because we really believe that we have to move towards either gray water or to purified water on site. We think that that's a really important thing coming up in the future, and we're going to try to address that as best we can in the next month, so that we can make things very, very clear. I believe that's the end of our presentation. Unless we want to go back over the same things, and I'm sure you folks don't want to do that one. I'm learning a lot in this process, and hopefully I'll learn more in the next month. But we're open for questions and any suggestions that you have.
Okay, thank you, Chet. This is, again, item 2CI, and we are now open for the commissioners' discussion. Yes, sir.
Just had a quick comment. So when you go forward with your implementation plan and language coming forward in July, are you also planning to look for some kind of simplified prescriptive method for designers to follow and for you to be able to review?
We're looking for every method that we can make this simple. So yes, the answer is yes. Now, I'm not sure how it's going to wind up coming out, because we do want to stay parallel to the other agencies at the same time, and parallel to the MWELO from DWR. But we would look for trying to make this as simple as possible.
Thank you.
Yes, please, your question.
This is just a request for a little bit of a clarification. In the Building Standards Commission's code change proposal, section 5.304.1 did not mention potable water. Does that mean that the use of gray, when you're using gray water, you're allowed a lot more water in schools? Or how does that play, the language you've added for potable water in this one?
Our
as opposed
goal, let me just speak about the goal, and that's why we're going to come back. Our goal, if a school is using gray water or turns around and develops their own purification system, we believe that they should be able to use as much as they can, as long as it's not potable water. That's what our goal is. How we enforce that and put that together is going to have to develop over this, for us, the next month. But I imagine, quite frankly, over the next 180 days, we're going to see this. And our one goal that we do have is we'd like to keep the system parallel to the system for all other agencies, because it's hard enough for architects and contractors, et cetera, to work within a set of codes, but if you have multiple codes, it becomes impossible. So I don't know if I'm answering your question. I hope I am. Okay.
I think with the Building Standards Commission, it was not specific to.
I think you're going to need to use your mic. I'm sorry. Thank you, Kelly.
I think with the Building Standards Commission's change, it was a lot more restrictive because it was reducing water for all landscaping. Period, not just the potable water. Thank you.
Can we take that into consideration during your comment period, your 15-day comment period? Okay. Any other points of discussion or questions from the commissioners? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to those who have submitted cards, and frankly, we don't have any public comments that were submitted. Is there anybody else in the audience that has a comment that they'd like to make at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll turn to the phones. Is there anyone on the phone? Leon? Yes, we can, John. Oh, that's troublesome. We'll have to fix that. I'm sorry. Yep. Thank you very much for letting us know. Right. John, if I don't mean to interrupt, but you may not have heard, we moved in the agenda to, we moved up to the state, Division of State Architects comments and reg changes in 2CI. So I think you're referring back to an earlier agenda item, and I'm going to turn to Mike to ask him to further explain where best your comments may lie.
I believe we hear what you're saying in your comments, and we've been discussing similar topics with a number of individuals related to how we're going to move forward with these requirements. So I believe a lot of what you're referring to are the provisions that are dealt with outside of Title 24 within the MWILA reference. So again, Mia had mentioned in the presentation earlier that we're simply enhancing that ETA, that efficiency factor, to move that Tier 2 into the mandatory, and all the other elements that go along with the calculation and determination of the final landscape plan are going to come from another source. We will be, during the 180-day regular rulemaking process, be looking to add or reference the material needed to pick up a lot of these items. I believe the mulch is something that Wes has mentioned in the past, and we'll probably look at that along with working with DWR and their workshop process to kind of come up with the next step. I hope that helps.
One or the other.
Right, well taken. Good observation. Okay, thank you, John. Anybody else on the phone? Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your comments.
This is just a
Commissioner Sasaki.
response to the caller. So my question about the 0.7 to 0.55, I wasn't involved in any previous workshops or discussions about that. That was more getting back actually to your question about what these numbers represent and whether or not they're feasible and achievable. So I guess I echo your questions. So.
Okay, I appreciate those comments very much. Any other commissioners' questions of the caller? Okay, thank you, sir, very much for your comments today and for calling in. Okay, do we have any other callers on the phone? Okay, thank you. That concludes the public comments portion, so I will turn item 2CI back over to the commissioners and entertain a motion at this time to first consider the Division of State Architects finding of emergency. I'm sorry.
Sorry, no. Finding of emergency first? Okay.
And then we'll go to the next, right? Yep. So this is, just to clarify, this is the Division of State Architects finding of emergency.
So moved.
It's been moved.
Second.
And seconded. Is there any further discussion from the commissioners on this motion? Okay, seeing none, hearing none, we will have to do a roll call vote. So, Misty, could you please call the roll?
Sure. Commissioner Barthman?
Yes.
Commissioner Booth?
Aye.
Commissioner Klaus-Bruckner?
Aye.
Commissioner Mickelton?
Aye.
Commissioner Roberts?
Aye.
Commissioner Sasaki?
Aye.
Commissioner Winkle?
Aye.
Commissioner Patel?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The vote is unanimous. The motion is carried. We're now moving to item 2CII, and that's open for the commissioners' discussion. We'll take comment. Let's see.
I actually had a quick question. Is it out of order? Again, the definitions do not say ET adjustment factor in section 202 as well as section 5.302.1. Is it out of order to propose a code change to amend that?
I'll turn to Mike and ask him to answer that.
Yeah, no, that's not out of order. Our intent is to align as closely as possible, and we don't want to have varying definitions that are intended to mean, to describe the same item. So we will work with DSA as we've been up to this point to try to clarify those. So, yeah, we can make those changes.
Not in an amendment today, however.
Right.
Okay. Good. All right. Any other discussions from the commissioner? Okay. We'll now take comments from members of the public. There are no cards here, are there?
Nope.
Okay, there are no cards. I'm seeing no one else from the public coming forward. Is there anybody on the phone? Sir, is he still on the line? Okay, I was going to ask him to repeat his name, which he did not. Okay. Is anyone else, Leon, on the phone? Please state your name. Okay, do you have a comment? Okay, thank you, sir. Any? Okay. Thank you very much, Leanne. Are there any other comments from anyone in the public, from the public? Nope, seeing none. With the finding of emergency approved, at this time I'd entertain a motion for action on the Division of State Architects' proposed changes to the subject building standards.
So moved.
It has been moved
And second?
and seconded to move forward on accepting the Division of State Architects' proposed changes to the subject building standards. Is there any further discussion on this matter among the commission? No, seeing none. And hearing none, we will take a roll call vote. Misty, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Barthman?
Yes.
Commissioner Booth?
Aye.
Commissioner Klaus-Buckner?
Aye.
Commissioner Mickelton?
Aye.
Commissioner Roberts?
Aye.
Commissioner Sasaki?
Aye.
Commissioner Winkle?
Aye.
Commissioner Patel?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's the vote is unanimous and the motion is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Chet. Okay, we're going to go back to HCD since we switched them in the agenda. I've got to find my. So we're now going to be on item 2BII. Am I right? GD, yeah. Okay. Hang on one moment. I get situated here.
We have had a request from the capture.
Oh. Okay. You know, I've been piling right through HCD. Hang on for a second. Been piling right through this agenda, and our gentleman who has been wonderful at capturing all of our comments needs a little break. So let's do a 5-minute health break for all of us. 5, is that good for you, sir? Okay, 5 minutes. It's now 15 of 3, a little beyond that. We'll be back. Let's say we'll be back here at 5 of 3. 5 of 3, please.
Yeah, but I'll be excited to get home.
Yes.
They didn't give me a very early flight out. You don't fly out till like 7 something. I'm like,
Oh, so you don't get like.
I'm
You know,
hoping.
like 9 o'clock you'll get home.
All the flights have been so full because
I know.
they're not bringing flights anymore. So I was hoping to get an early flight out, and then like I've been able to do standby and get home. But it was so busy today. They were begging. They were offering people to pay money. You know.
Friday's not a good day to fly. I mean,
The line was
like Thursday.
It's
It's weird.
The
It's
summer's gonna.
It's summertime, but it's weird. It's like hit or miss. I mean, sometimes I'll fly. I'll fly to LA or whatever.
Yeah.
And like, there's nobody in the airport. You know, I get there in the morning. It's like there's no line for Southwest at all. And then other times, it's like, oh my god.
It was horrible.
Well, it's horrible.
I figured
you
it
know?
was Friday with summer vacations
Right.
and everything. And
Yes. Right, and that's the worst though. There's like a family of 7. And they
Well, then
like,
we had schools. But like, where are you from? Like the 4th grade class of their schools.
Right,
was all there.
I'm like, okay, it's gee,
I'm like,
wow,
my fourth
really?
grade, my kids in fourth grade never went to
Okay.
Sacramento.
Yeah, it's a weekend at the Capitol. You know, it's how government works.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm like, a Friday? You go to the Capitol on Friday?
Yeah, right.
Is there anything going on Friday? I mean, anyway, it was funny. Yeah, so that was the only painful part. And I got her really, really, so I hung out at Starbucks. I got here. Oh, then we had to do the code advisory committee appointment meeting.
Yeah.
At least that filled a little gap.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
I'm done with that. Moving on.
No, it's and so you're Ontario or which?
Yeah, I'll find it out in Ontario. So at least it's easy.
Yeah.
It's close to me, but
yeah. So it's, I mean, Sacramento. So there's a flight every couple hours. Or?
The problem is they don't have that many. Like, there's only 2 in the morning.
Yeah,
There's one at 6:45, and there's one at 10:20. And the 10:21 didn't get me here till 11:30, and our meeting was at noon.
Right. Yeah.
Or no, our meeting was at 11.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So it was like for
right.
school.
I know.
Like, how does there only 2 flights out of there?
I know.
I don't get it.
I don't know.
But the amount of, I always see 4 or 5 people I know in the airport.
Right.
Because everybody's doing this. Today was less because of it being a Friday, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there might be more frequent flight. I don't know. I've never really flown into Sacramento, but Burbank maybe there's more flights, but
There used to be more. I think they're just trying to economize. They're all full now. Before, like I was talking to our mayor was on the plane, so I sat next to him, and he does it all the time.
Sure.
So he was saying that he used to fly, and there was always the middle seat open.
Yep.
No.
Yep. No.
Yes, he just said they've changed it around. Obviously, it's where they
No, I fly to Chicago. I used to fly 6 to 8 times a year, and it's like now it's always oversold. Yeah. I mean, it's like there's 15 people on standby. Right? I mean, they're like that's
frustrating.
I know. Every seat is sold, so
who gets the raw end of that deal? Just if you're late?
What was that?
Who gets the raw end of that deal if you're late?
So that's United. So I guess it really. I mean,
do they assign seats ahead of time?
Yes, they do. Right. So you're all, fine, except if you're not a premier member or something like a frequent flyer member, then if you're in the whatever 4th seating zone, then you're screwed if you have luggage, right? Then there's now all the bins are freaking completely full, right? With Southwest, it's just hard. I mean, the same sort of thing. If you have a,
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your 2-second warning.
2 seconds.
Cracking the whip.
I will.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah.
They're under control. They'll be on. We don't have to worry about it. She has got buttons.
Kind of awkward.
Take your seats, please. We're going to reconvene. Oh, wait a minute. We don't have our... Whoops.
No capturing yet?
No capturing. I told him to go exercise his fingers. I think he is. Are you okay? Ready to go? All right, very well. Okay, we're going to reconvene the hearing. The next item on the agenda is 2B, the Department of Housing and Community Development, and the representatives are at the table. And I'm going to ask you, ladies and gentlemen, to please repeat your name and your title.
Good afternoon, Madam Secretary and Commissioners. Thank you. My name is Sean Huff, Assistant Deputy Chief of the Division of Codes and Standards for the Department of Housing and Community Development. To my right is Kyle Kraus. Sorry for the introduction, Kyle. Codes and Standards Administrator and Program Manager for our State Housing Law Program. And to my far right is Emily Withers, who is a Codes and Standards Administrator too. I'm going to just be brief, and then I'll turn it over to Kyle for a brief statement with regards to the finding of emergency, our proposed express terms, and then we'll follow from there with any questions that may be answered. But first of all, I wanted to thank not only the commission for on such short notice being able to make a full commission meeting and a quorum, so that's wonderful in this short notice. I also wanted to take the time to thank Mia Marvelli for the wonderful job she did presenting earlier, that hopefully will make our presentation much more short and concise. With that said, I will go ahead and turn it over to Kyle Kraus, and he'll read a brief statement with regards to the finding of emergency.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Kyle Kraus, representing Department of Housing and Community Development. Today, HCD respectfully requests the Commission to approve its proposed finding of emergency and emergency regulations developed for purposes of alleviating drought impacts on the citizens of California. HCD's emergency regulations for new residential buildings have been developed in response to and in support of the Governor's Executive Order B-2915 and prior proclamations acknowledging the severity of California's drought and the need to plan for immediate and future reductions in water use. HCD recognizes that outdoor water use, especially potable water use, comprises a large portion, up to 34%, of residential water use. Therefore, HCD, in coordination with other state agencies, is approaching the problem utilizing building standards to provide additional oversight to outdoor water use, especially as related to irrigation of outdoor landscapes. This approach utilizes a scientific method for estimating water use developed by the Department of Water Resources, encompassed in their Model Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance, or MWELO, as well as methods for outdoor water reduction recognized as voluntary measures in the 2013 California Green Building Standards Code. HCD's proposed regulations mandate the use of MWELO or similar local ordinances
for development of water budgets applicable to new residential construction. In addition, HCD's regulations, in coordination with the Building Standards Commission, require adjustments in the MWILO water budget formulas, resulting in lower water use allowances for purposes of designing landscapes. Landscapes designed in accordance with the new regulations will result in potable water savings due to smaller turf areas and increased use of low water demand or drought-tolerant plantings. HCD requests that the Commission approve our proposed mandatory measures on an emergency basis to be effective immediately. HCD is prepared to notify stakeholders of adoption of emergency regulations through both HCD-specific and BSC, or Building Standards Commission, information bulletins, and by providing guidance documents on our website. We are also working closely with the Department of Water Resources and requesting that they assist by providing technical assistance, including development of user-friendly water budget calculators for compliance with the regulations. HCD would like to restate and thank the other state agencies and our stakeholders for the assistance and comments as we develop this emergency proposal. HCD looks forward to working with stakeholders during the subsequent certifying rulemaking, and now we're happy to answer any questions.
Okay, well, thank you. Emily, do you have a statement as well?
Pardon?
Do you have a statement as well?
No, I don't.
Okay,
It's a prepared statement by HCD. Mia was so gracious in giving that full background that, as Sean stated, we feel that we didn't need to go through that introduction again, and our regulations are very similar to BSC's.
Okay, Sean, Kyle, Emily, thank you very much. I'll now turn to opening up the discussion for the Commission on the action of finding of emergency. Any discussion? Okay, terrific. We have some cards, but I'm going to hold them until after the vote of the finding of the emergency, and then we'll talk. I think the public is here to discuss the actual regs. So for those that have submitted cards, hang on. We're going to get to you. Okay, finding of the emergency. Is there anybody else in the public at this point of time that would like to come forward? Okay, seeing none. Is there anybody on the phone? And if there is anybody on the phone, I need you to spell your name. State it and spell it. Thank you. Okay. There are no members of the public on the phone. So that concludes the public comment portion. So I'll turn to item 2BI back over to the commissioners and entertain a motion at this time to consider the Department of Housing and Community Development's finding of emergency. And commissioners, I've been asked by our friend who is typing madly to, when you make a motion and when you second, if you could just state your name. So thank you. I'm looking for a motion. Commissioner Brathwaite.
Barthman.
Okay, a motion has been made. Do I have a second?
And seconded. Commissioner Winkle.
A motion has been made and second to adopt the Department of Housing and Community Development's finding of emergency. Is there any further discussion on this? Okay, thank you very much. Seeing none, we will need to take a roll call vote on this, please. Misty, could you please call the roll?
Sure. Commissioner Barthman?
Yes.
Commissioner Booth?
Aye.
Commissioner Klaus Bruckner?
Aye.
Commissioner Mickelton?
Aye.
Commissioner Roberts?
Aye.
Commissioner Sasaki?
Aye.
Commissioner Winkle?
Aye.
Commissioner Patel?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. The vote is unanimous and the motion is carried. Thank you. All right, so action for adoption of the proposed regulations. We're moving now to item 2BII. And I think is there further statements by HCD?
Our proposals are very similar to the Building Standards Commission. We've heard the testimony, and in response to that, we'll be working with all stakeholders, so no further testimony.
Okay, thanks, Sean. We'll now open it up for discussion of the commissioners.
question?
Yes, sir. Mr. Winkle?
Just a couple of comments. You refer to special landscaped areas in the body of the code, but there isn't a definition of SLAs. Are you? Is it in the body of the code already, or are you relying on the Commission's definition?
Emily, one moment, please. I believe it's not in our definition, nor did we propose it. It is already in the MWELO, and if it's determined that we need to put that definition into Cal Green for ease of use, we'll look at doing that during the certified rulemaking process.
Yeah, the only reason I ask it is that it's not exactly parallel construction to like the Building Standards Commission. And then I guess the other question I had is looking at your Chapter 4, there is no threshold. And basically, this would apply to any project that comes under HCD's jurisdiction?
Again, the reference in the building standards still takes it back to the Model Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance, or MWELO, for there. If you're talking about the square footage size, would still take it to what is triggered by the MWELO now. We haven't made any adjustments to, and if I'm remembering correctly, it's the 2,500 Emily and the 5,000 square feet based upon if it's production or if it's owner built, correct?
Yeah, the MWELO in 490.1 actually lists the scope of the size, and it's 2,500 square feet for developer installed in single family and multifamily projects, and then for new construction landscapes which are homeowner provided or homeowner hired in single family and multifamily residential, the area is 5,000 square feet or greater.
Okay. I would recommend that you coordinate at least the scope language with the Commission's language, so that there isn't a confusion of people moving back and forth with different project types. The concern I've got is that it says MWELO or a local ordinance, whichever is more stringent, and if someone changes the thresholds or neglects to have them at the local level, you could be kind of left at sea if you're not working with MWELO.
We're hopeful during this certifying rulemaking process in the 180 days that working with the Department of Water Resources, that they're looking at the scoping and the factors right now for the landscape area, and we will hopefully adjust it at the same time.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the Commissioner or discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll now take comments from the public on item 2BII. And as I stated earlier, we do have some cards here. We'll start with Doug. Mr. Doug Hensel, would you like to come forward, please? And again, please state your name clearly and state who you are representing.
My name is Doug Hensel. I'm the building official for San Joaquin County. I'm here today representing the California building officials. I'm also a member of the board of directors for CalBO and the chair of the State Code Committee. Building officials we're enforcers, and we do a really good job at enforcing things that we understand, that are clear to us, and we can explain to our customers. One of the things that we participated yesterday in a conference call with DWR, and one of the things that we suggested was a prescriptive method of compliance. And one of the things that we talked about was maybe if you have a trigger area, so an area that's a given size, you're allowed to do this, this, and this, and those assumptions are based on the MWELO. What that does for my folks is when they go out to the site, they're able to look at what they see. They can calculate areas pretty easily. They can count plants. They can look at the depth of mulch. But I think if we do that, we can get some good enforcement. We can have great regulations, but if we don't have good enforcement, the regulation isn't effective. Mm-hmm. So what I would like you to consider in your action today is ask the state agencies or give them guidance to work with DWR, work with CalBO, and building industry and the other stakeholders to take a look at developing something that is prescriptive. My assumption would be that would be in the MWELO, and make it work together with what's in Cal Green. I think that we can go a long ways if we can pull this off and accomplish it. There'll be ample time. The certification part of the rulemaking is 180 days. Sounds like that is well within what DWR's goals are. And it's a new area for us. But again, what we do well at is enforcement. And we do especially well when we can understand it and we can explain it to our customers. So that's it.
Very helpful. Thank you very much, Mr. Hensel. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Norwood, would you like to come back up?
Madam Chair and members, John Norwood on behalf of the California Pool and Spa Association. Appreciate the opportunity to address you today. First of all, I want to agree with the comments that were made earlier about the fact that MWELO is not well understood or enforced amongst building officials. Our pool and spa contractors that do residential construction, as I've talked to them over the last couple of weeks, aren't really familiar with this at all. And as a result, we've really kind of struggled with this process and to figure out how these regulations could affect us. I think that our concern here is that the regulations don't treat swimming pools and spas differently from other water features such as lakes, ponds, and fountains, which is required by California Water Code Section 10632B. Now, the rationale for that code section, because we did it back in 2011 or 2012, was that you have to treat pools in their entirety, not just the water. And there's modifications you can make that will positively affect the evaporation ratio for pools so that they're not considered high water users. As an example, a average 1,200 square foot pool that most often replaces turf is about 2 or 3 times more efficient water-wise than the turf that they're replacing. Once built, it's substantially more efficient water-wise than what's known now as California-friendly landscape. It's as efficient as drought-tolerant landscaping, and if you cover the pool when it's not in use, it uses about half the water as drought landscaping. So that's what we're really trying to get to. So you take the situation where in a lot of applications you have a backyard, and the backyard is primarily pool decking, and today outside kitchens and spas and things like that. So the ratio of water to decking is 1.5 to 3, and none of that hardscape has an evaporation problem. So oftentimes those yards are just the decking, the pool, and some planting area. On the other hand, and for those, the water efficiency is way up there, and I think that's kind of what we want. There are also family-friendly backyards where I think a family's trying to come up with a pool, a planting area, and some lawn. And we understand that they want to reduce lawn, but the way you look at that is that both the lawn and the pool would be considered high water users, and so you'd have to have so much drought-resistant planting around it to offset that. You'd have to build a itty-bitty little pool or a very, very small lawn, if any. So I guess what I'm trying to say is what we're looking for is a couple different things. Some recognition that these are different. I also want to comment just briefly, because spas are included in there, and some of our members do that. Standalone pools and spas, standalone spas and hot tubs are very efficient. They're always covered. They don't lose 20% of the water that goes into 5% of the water over a year. So, their efficiency is much higher. Pools are different, but again, they're pretty efficient. If there's various technologies out there that from built-in covers to bubble covers to solar rings and squares to now liquid pool covers that actually save a lot on evaporation and would alter the calculation to get to the total amount of water that would be allowed. So as we go forward, I guess what we're looking for is to working with you all to come up with factors that recognize this code section and the fact that there are technologies out there that are available to reduce evaporation, that you have to really look at pools and spas in their entirety. The way I read the MWillow document, the hardscape's completely taken out. So you're only looking in that backyard I was telling you about that is just the pool, the deck, and a little bit of planting. The only thing you're looking at is the water area of the pool and the planting area. And so you'd have to make, say the pool's 600 square feet in the water area. I think the average is about 450, and the planting area is pretty small. You'd have to way reduce the size of the pool to be able to come up with that calculation the way I read it. Again, as we go forward with the permanent rulemaking, as I understand, there's going to be some review of the MWillow ordinance as well. We'd like to work with you towards those goals.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, John. Are there any questions of Mr. Norwood? Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Ms. Dowden, would you like to come back to the table?
No, she's good.
No? Okay. I don't have glasses on. Did she say good? I'm sorry, I cannot see, but it's terrible. I'm blind. To you all out there, I can see perfectly without my glasses here, so that's why I have to do this. And you shook your head. No, right? Yeah, okay. Good. All right, Mr. Farmer. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My name is John Farner. I'm with the Irrigation Association. You may have seen our trade association reference throughout some of these codes and standards you've been reading throughout this process. Just very quickly, we're a national trade association representing manufacturers. So Mr. Wolforth from Rainbird, who spoke earlier, is a member of ours, down to consultants, designers, and to contractors, both turf, landscape, as well as agriculture. But for the purpose of this conversation, we'll keep the comments to turf and landscape irrigation. I'd like to first start out by saying, even though you guys are moving very quickly, but we appreciate the openness that you've had with the public on this. The building commissions, DWR, I think I've spoken more with folks from these agencies during informal rule processes than formal rule processes. So it's very refreshing to have this public forum during these emergency hearings. I'd like to first start out by saying my industry is, and this is really referencing all three, but I decided to come up during the housing side for various reasons, but we continue to work with DWR to make the Model Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance better. And I think that through the governor's executive order, through this process, we can make it better. I think what Mr. Wolfarth said earlier during the architect's presentation holds value in that the current structure of the Model Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance, we haven't had a chance to see it work. But we are in trying times right now with this drought, and so emergency measures need to be taken. I will say also that because we're looking at landscape design and installation of plant material through this landscape ordinance, when we come out of the drought, these are lasting things we're looking at here. These aren't immediate. So we're only talking about new construction, whether it's commercial before or residential now. It's all about landscape plant material, not about water use. It's about high, medium, and low water use plants, turf grass, trees, shrubs, etc. Now, I'm not going to comment on whether it's 0.7, 0.55. even within my industry, we have a lot of smart people working with DWR to see what works best. And I think that through our conversations with Peter and Julie and their staff at DWR, I think we'll come out to a good resolution on this, coupled with some options for enforcement of this model ordinance. But I will say, I think we're missing an opportunity. I'm going to echo what Tracy with NRDC said earlier. We're looking at irrigation technologies. In the housing component, we do talk about smart controllers, whether it's soil moisture-based or weather-based irrigation controllers. I think it's very good. However, I think there's a lot of opportunities for water loss in this as well. If they're not managed properly and measured properly, water loss will occur, whether we're in drought or non-drought times. Tracy mentioned the standard, the ANSI standard. This is pretty fresh ink we're talking about here, and I really encourage this commission to look at the use, and I brought copies of this standard to use either during the emergency resolutions looking at now or long term. We're talking about the performance of irrigation technologies to ensure they're working in a manner that is very efficient. I also encourage you to look at best management practices. Look at how irrigation technology design should occur. The use of professionals. I think a lot of opportunities for water savings can occur here as well. And finally, I'll talk about prescriptive versus outcome-based. I really appreciate the first speaker talking about prescriptive outcomes, and I think those are very important. However, I don't want to look at stifling innovation through prescriptive regulations. However, we're in a regulation world here, especially when it comes to code. You need prescriptive measures to look at. That's totally understandable. My industry comes from an outcome-based model, where look at the end result, what you want to achieve, and we'll get you there.
I'm going to ask you to slow down just
Oh, I'm sorry.
With your conclusion, but slow down
Yeah,
with
no,
your words.
I'm very close. So I would encourage this committee to look at options, to look at prescriptive measures that do not stifle innovation. And I'll end there.
Okay, great, Mr. Farner. Any questions of Mr. Farner? Okay, thank you very much, sir. All right, that is the last of our public card. Yes, Tracy, or did you have a comment? Yes, certainly. You're going to need to restate your name, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
And who you represent.
My name is Tracy Quinn, and I'm with the Natural Resources Defense Council. I had a few additional comments that I withheld during the BSC that pertain particularly to the residential
Okay, I'm
sector.
sorry if I missed that. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah,
It's
go
okay.
ahead.
First off, I would say that there's been a lot of talk about the threshold levels and what's appropriate, and whether or not when housing developments are put in by a developer, whether or not that threshold applies to the individual home within each individual home within that development or the development as a whole. I know there's been some confusion in the application of that and in the enforcement of that. It's a conversation that came up within the independent technical panel, which is a group of stakeholders working with DWR on a variety of water efficiency measures, including WELO, revising WELO. And I think that given the inconsistency in which that is applied, that lowering the threshold really does make sense, particularly in the residential sector, where we are seeing much smaller landscape areas in current and projected future development. We've made the recommendation for that lower threshold to be 200. And in the ITP meeting today, they voted and approved a recommendation to DWR for that to be 500 square feet, and for the developer, and 3,000 square feet for the owner installed. And that is specifically to address that issue of that confusion and to make sure that going forward, more landscaping is going to be addressed by this. Secondly, as I said in my last comment, you can't manage what you can't measure. And so I really implore you to move the voluntary submetering of outdoor water use into the mandatory section of CalGreen through this emergency measure, and set that threshold at 200 as well, or at least lower than 2,500 or 1,000. so that it encompasses a larger degree of the new development. If you choose not to move forward with this emergency regulation, I would ask that you direct staff to consider it as part of the ongoing CalGreen revision. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Quinn. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. Sorry we skipped you earlier. Okay, there are no other cards, I don't believe. Is there anybody on the phone who would like to comment? Okay, great. Thank you, Leanne. All right, so with the finding of the emergency approved, at this time I'd entertain a motion for action on the Department of Housing and Community Development's proposed changes to the subject building standards. Do I have a motion?
Commissioner Sasaki, so moved.
Thank you. A second?
Commissioner Winkle, second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the Department of Housing and Community Development's proposed changes to the subject building standards. Is there any further discussion of the commission? Okay, seeing none, this will be a roll call vote. So, Misty, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Commissioner Barthman?
Yes.
Commissioner Booth?
Aye.
Commissioner Klaus Bruckner? Commissioner Mickelton?
Aye.
Commissioner Roberts? Commissioner Sasaki?
Aye.
Commissioner Winkle?
Aye.
And Commissioner Patel? Thank you.
Thank you. This has been a unanimous vote, and the motion is carried. So thank you all. Thank you,
Thank you.
HCD, for all your hard work. Appreciate it. All right. We're now moving on to the next item, which is agenda item 2D. So the Office of Statewide Health Planning and Development, these proposed building standards would add, amend, or repeal building standards relative to water efficiency, affecting a reduction in outdoor irrigation water usage relative to Chapter 3 within Part 11 of Title 24. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Glenn Gall with the Building Standards Unit of OSHPD. First, I'd like to thank you for meeting in this building again, since my office is just on the way, and I can continue to get here not as late as normal. First, I'd ask that you find this request for emergency of passage of these regulations. They are a little bit different than the other agencies that have sat at this table today. To explain that, OSHPD does not have discrete authority to regulate landscaping when it comes to health facilities that are under our jurisdiction. We are a little bit disruptive in the local process.
2 and 4.
Yeah, OSHPD 3 still resides wholly with the local jurisdiction. We write regulations for those facilities. They are outpatient clinics and outpatient clinical provided in freestanding buildings, but those buildings are not under our direct jurisdiction.
So your thought is if there was a local water conservation ordinance, that it would be covered by the local AHJ?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any? Yes.
Question following up on that. If an OSHPD 3 decided to come to the state for review, would they have that option, and would you be able to, what would you be enforcing at that point?
There are two ways that those OSHPD 3 facilities can come to the state for review. One is called a certification review, but in the only thing we review and certify is the health facility overlay. So the regulations that we produce that apply to that given health facility. The building still remains and is permitted in the local jurisdiction. It's still a part of that local process for all of the structural elements, the exiting, and any associated site accommodation issues. The buildings that may reside with us that would be OSHPD 3 typically are very proximate to the hospital building. And this one is where it gets difficult. We're seeing a lot of decommissioning of older hospital buildings that haven't been able to retrofit seismically. Some of those are still required to remain with us as OSHPD 3 buildings because of their physical proximity to the hospital. There's no way you could declare them or detach them as local buildings. So once again, those local site issues are still remaining with the local. But the OSHPD 3 facility in and of itself could reside with us wholly.
Okay, great. Are there any other questions of Glenn? Okay, see none. Thank you. We do not have any cards that have been submitted by the public, so we're going to proceed to the phone to see if there's any public on the phone who would like to comment on 2DI. Okay, great. So we have no one on the phone. Is there anybody else from the public that would like to comment at this time? Okay, seeing none. That concludes the public comment portion, so I will turn item 2DI back over to the commissioners and entertain a motion at this time to consider the Office of Statewide Health Planning and Development's finding of emergency.
So moved, Commissioner Barthman.
It has been moved
Commissioner Mickerton, second.
and seconded to accept the Office of Statewide Health Planning and Development's finding of emergency. Is there any further discussion on this item? Okay, seeing none, this will be a roll call vote. So, Misty, call the roll.
Sure. Commissioner Barthman?
Yes.
Commissioner Booth?
Aye.
Commissioner Klaus Bruckner? Commissioner Mickerton? Commissioner Roberts?
Aye.
Commissioner Sasaki?
Aye.
Commissioner Winkle?
Aye.
Commissioner Patel? Thank you.
Thank you, Misty. The vote is unanimous and the motion is carried, so thank you. We will now proceed to item 2DII, which is action for the adoption of the proposed regulations.
Okay, the regulations in brief, we relied on all the heavy lifting of the Building Standards Commission because those are the regulations that apply to our facilities when there is nothing adopted locally. That said, we do a direct reference to their section 5.304, outdoor water use, and just require evidence of compliance prior to our issuance of plan approval or building permit.
Great. Okay, I open for comments from the commission and discussion. Okay. Seeing none, we'll now take comments from members of the public. We have no cards on this item 2DII, so we'll turn to the phone. Leanne, do we have any? No. Okay, we have no comments from the phone, from members of the public on the phone, I should say. So, with the finding of the emergency approved, this time I would entertain a motion for action on the Office of Statewide Health Planning and Development's proposed changes to the subject building standards.
Again, so moved, Commissioner Barthman.
Second, Commissioner Winkle.
It has been moved and seconded to accept the Office of Statewide Health Planning and Development's proposed changes to the subject building standards. Is there any further discussion from the commission at this time? Okay, your agenda items. Do any of the commissioners have any place on the future agenda? Okay. Does anyone from the public wish to address this item, that being future items for the agenda? Okay. Next item on the agenda is item number 4, comments from the public on issues not on the agenda today. Okay, very well. Seeing none. Does anyone from the public have comments for the commission on, well, we already done that. I'm sorry. Excuse me. I lost my place. I think this concludes, by golly. This concludes the agenda and the meeting of the California Building Standards Commission. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second. I think we don't have to do a roll call vote on this one. All in favor of adjourning the meeting? Aye. I'd say that's a unanimous vote. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for your time, and I want to add my special thanks to the BSC staff. This really has been a huge accomplishment that's been made in a very short amount of time. Mike, Jim, who is out ill, thank you for your leadership. Mia, thank you so very much. I know it's been extraordinary, and many of folks here today joined in that testimony of your great efforts, and I really, really thank you. And I know the Commission joins me in thanking you for this Herculean effort.
Thank you, Secretary. I also want to extend that out to the other agencies who worked with us on short notice to develop the regulations. We couldn't have done it without them, so thank you very much.
And thank you for all your hard work today in signing and typing.
Well, good job, Secretary.
Oh, my goodness. A lot of